Louise Upston.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. There are some pieces of legislation where the divide between the left and the right is more obvious than others. This is one such piece of legislation. And I'm very proud, Mr Speaker, to say that the values of the National Party include freedom and choice. Part of balancing freedom of choice is, of course, Mr Speaker, responsibility. The left, however, have been clinging to compulsory student union membership and fought this like they have not fought any other single piece of legislation in this House. You would think that they would strongly fight changes to labour laws, to taxation changes, to welfare reform. But no, Mr Speaker, this is the one piece of legislation that they hold up the House for nearly 2 years. This is the piece of legislation that they choose to die in a ditch over. This is what matters most to them. Not to the majority of New Zealanders, though, I might add, Mr Speaker. This side of the House won't tell students what to do. We will give students the choice. So I applaud the ACT member, Heather Roy, for bringing this member's bill to the House. I applaud her work and her efforts, the tag team with Sir Roger Douglas. They got this member's bill through the Select Committee process so that we're here today for the third reading. In no other sector in New Zealand is union membership compulsory. So why do you expect that we would discriminate against students? Compulsory student unions are the last vestige of a bygone era of compulsory unionism and, of course, was going to change. But the point, Mr Speaker, just the same way that trade unions are still strong and still active, student associations will still be strong and active without the coercion of their members. I believe that voluntary unionism will actually improve the performance of student associations because it will actually make them more responsive to what the students want. They'll provide a mandate for advocacy based on engagement with the issues at hand. Absolutely, they do hate choice. They can't stand it. It was actually really interesting that the leader of the opposition said this week that this bill would would compel voluntary membership. And I thought that was such a fascinating turn of phrase from a party that was so obsessed with compulsion and can't handle the fact that this is a party who values choice. So if we look at this bill, student associations will still be able to support students. They'll be able to tender for commercial contracts from institutions, and they'll advocate on behalf of their students. But the most important, Mr Speaker, is that their students' rights will remain unchanged. Now, I want to quote, or I want to bring to the attention of the House, the NZUSA submission, which clearly talks about the value of student associations. And I agree. I agree that they do deliver value to students. What I don't agree with is their concern that students won't value their services. I disagree with that. Because if they value their services, they will join the association. And that's exactly how it should be. Just as people join advocacy organisations or professional organisations. This bill, Mr Speaker, will not destroy student unions. They will still be able to offer all the services that they currently do, including advocacy, including lobbying, but they will just have to attract members on their merit. Oh, on their merit, not on legal force, on their merit. Mr Speaker, some argue that voluntary membership does already exist. But if it does already exist, as some claim that it does, then why would they fear these changes? Choice for students also will mean greater accountability for student unions. And again, I don't think that student unions should have anything to fear from this. Students should not have to vote in a referendum to receive basic rights of freedom of association. Unions that demonstrate value to students will continue exactly as they are. Opponents say that students can leave the association if they wish. But in reality, the submitters that came before us told us how difficult that was in reality. And the very interesting thing to note, that in the last 18 months, some student associations have changed the way that people can exit if they choose. Funny that it happens right about now. Tertiary institutions will still be required to ensure students are looked after. They will take note of customer feedback and concerns. One of the other things, Mr. Speaker, that opponents have talked about is the quantity of submissions opposing this bill. Now, Heather Roy went through this in detail, so I won't cover it too much, other than to say I want to bring the House's attention to emails that I received from so-called students who were opposing the bill. When I replied to these emails, I got puzzled responses from some students who had absolutely no idea that emails had been sent in their name from their email account opposing the bill. Now, part of the difficulty in understanding the opposition to this bill is the changing phrases by student unions. Student unions have been changing their tune because they can't decide who they are like. First of all, they said they were like trade unions, but trade unions became not compulsory, so they had to change their thinking then. Then they moved on to, we're like professional bodies, like the Medical Association. But then they changed again. They've now gone into two parts, the Medical Council and the, surprise, surprise, the voluntary New Zealand Medical Association. But now, since they lost that one, it's like local government. And they think they can take money off people against their will and have no accountability and no feedback mechanisms or safeguards for doing exactly that. Or the one I love, this is probably the best for me, is the argument about the fact that the student associations have the only true independent voice. Well, this was one very large concern that was raised by those who support the bill, who said and gave examples of the use of students' association money to fund political campaigns. And this is so-called independence. Some of the associations are clearly not independent at all. And one of the NZUSA press releases before the last election said that the National Party was out of touch with thinking voters. When in reality, the National Party got more votes in the 18 to 24-year-old of any other political party. So I wonder who was out of touch if it wasn't the Student Association. As a result of this bill, Mr. Speaker, will students think twice about joining a student union? Probably. Will students get value from their student associations? Most likely. Will students get to choose? Absolutely.
Ian Lee.